So, our essential question today is 17.2. What effects did the Raj have on India? And then we're going to move into how did Great Britain increase their trade in China? Okay? So, I'm going to kind of slow down a little bit because I feel like I just kind of rushed through the notes and then everything gets all crazy, and then I can just imagine you guys clicking to try to keep up. I can imagine, the looks on some of your guys' faces. Well, why don't you slow the heck down? All right, so let me just slow down and, have more of a discussion with you guys rather than just talk 100 miles an hour, okay? All right, so pause if you need to. All right, now, like I was saying, we left off where there was this big, massive revolt called the Sepoy Uprising. Your history books might call it the Sepoy Mutiny. But what had happened was, if you remember, there was a misunderstanding about, the bullets that the Sepoys used, and there was a rumor that it was the bullets were greased in cow and pig fat, and in reality that wasn't true, but the big underlying factor was the Indian people were just upset, and there was discontent with all the drastic change, and maybe Indian people felt like their civilization was slipping away from them, and they were slowly being conquered by the British, which is exactly what was happening. And that was the big factor that caused the revolt. But now, the revolt has happened, Great Britain has put down the revolt, and now, Great Britain is going to directly rule India, not the East India Company. So, let's talk about this time period known as the Raj. So, the Government of India Act 1858. So, after the British East India Company was kicked out of India by Queen Victoria, the Queen of England, boy, we've got a lot to say about her a little bit later, not today, but in other notes, especially about World War I. Queen Victoria was the Queen of England, and up until recently, Queen Elizabeth, she was the longest ruling British monarch. But like I said, Queen Elizabeth's got her beat now. But anyway, she was the Queen of England, and what she did after the uprising was she transferred control of India from the East India Company directly to herself and England. All right, so before, India was governed by a company. Now they're going to be governed and controlled directly by the British. And we'll talk about what that means. So, all right, what that means is basically Great Britain is going to set up an entire British government in India. They're going to ship British officials there. They're going to ship military there. They're going to ship their families there. All of these things, all right? A viceroy is going to act as the voice of the queen. So basically, India is under the control of a viceroy, which is a government official. And the viceroy, like I said, is a direct voice of the queen. So obviously, Queen Victoria is not going to live in India, although she is named the Empress of India. But basically, if the viceroy says it, the queen says it, the direct representative of the queen. So if you can imagine, you've got a viceroy, you've got all of these officials, you've got the entire government bureaucracy relocating to India. And more British military officers are going to be in India to make sure no revolts like that happen again. Now, there's not going to be revolts like that for a while, but the Sepoy Uprising left a lasting effect on the British, okay? From this point on, the British are going to be terrified that a revolt like this might happen again. And you're going to see in other parts of the note that this is going to lead to massacres on the side of the British where they're going to kill innocent, unarmed Indian people. Okay? So, this whole thing, when the British government takes direct control over India, this period is known as the Raj. That's what they call it, all right? The period where basically India is controlled by Great Britain, all right? So I hope you see the difference, guys, between the East India Company ruling Britain and Great Britain itself. There is a difference. There's the rule of the East India Company, and then there's the Raj, okay? Pause if you need to. All right, so what I want to move into now is what was life like in India under the Raj? So, I already told you guys this. The Raj refers to the period where India directly under control of Great Britain. So, the British move in, all right? So, one of the things that the British are going to do is they're going to build railroads all over India to connect India to different parts of their empire to move resources from the inner part of India to the coasts where British shipping can take resources throughout the rest of the world. All right? So, guys, building a railroad looks like a positive thing, right? If you think about it, the British are going to give jobs to a lot of Indian people. Indian people are going to be able to utilize the cheap transportation of the British railroads. So the British are going to point to this as something positive they brought to India. Okay? Another thing they're going to do is they're going to introduce telegraphs and later on telephones. Now, this is another thing that Europeans claim when we talk about, was imperialism good or was imperialism bad, or not good or bad, more like, was it beneficial or harmful? Europeans are going to say it was beneficial. Look, we brought these people modern technology. So the telegraph, I don't know if we've talked about a telegraph before, it's what they used before the telephone. Basically, you would beep out messages in Morse code through wires that look just like telephone wires, they pretty much are, and then somebody, hundreds, even thousands of miles away, will receive the Morse code, translate it into letters, and it's a way, guys, to send messages long distance. It's what they used before telephones. Now, later on, the British are going to bring telephones once the technology gets there. All right, in the Second Industrial Revolution, telephones do get introduced. Okay, but think about this. Now, India is going to be connected to the rest of the British Empire and to the rest of the world through communication. Now, another thing that Great Britain is going to do is bring modern factories. Excuse me, that was not a coronavirus sneeze, because you know what? The coronavirus has nothing to do with sneezes. But anyway, so they brought in modern factories to increase manufacturing. Now, was this harmful or beneficial? We'll talk about that in a second. But one of the things that Great Britain's going to do in India is they're going to manufacture. Okay? And one of the things that they're going to manufacture a lot of is Indian cotton. Once again, we'll talk about that in just a little bit later. But you can imagine, guys, factories coming into India, they're going to become modernized, they're going to start producing stuff. All right? Now, one of the big things, guys, that Europeans and the British always point to when they talk about imperialism is, look, we brought the benefits of Western medicine to other nations. And they did. They set up hospitals all over India, and they taught Indian people about what Europeans now know about medicine. They're going to teach them about the germ theory of disease. They're going to teach them about sterilization. And, guys, all of these modern ideas, okay, that Europeans use. So, once again, imperialism is a very complicated subject, all right? Very complicated. Europeans point to all the great things that they did. On the next slide, guys, we're going to see the downside of imperialism in India. Okay? So, pause if you need to. Oh yeah, one more thing. Dang it, you would have thought I looked at these slides earlier, and I did, guys, I just forgot. The British are also going to introduce a Western education. All right? So they're going to bring all the ideas of the Enlightenment, natural rights, all of that stuff, guys, are going to come to India. And you might think, wow, that's good. Indian people are going to get educated in modern ideas. We're going to talk about what that means, though, on the next slide, okay? So pause if you need to. All right, now, let's talk about poor Indians suffer. So think about this. You might say, wow, Great Britain is bringing in all this technology, all these modern ideas. But here's the deal. Let's say if you were an Indian person still working in the cottage industry where you sold goods that you made by hand. Well, guess what? Are people going to shop at you anymore? Or are they going to go to a British factory that can make stuff a lot faster and cheaper? You're right, they're going to go to the British people. So, Indian handmade industries, which was what a lot of people did, were put out of business. Because think about it, if you're a poor Indian person that relies on your handcrafts for a living, and here's a British factory that makes things far quicker and far, cheaper than you do, then everybody's going to buy for them. So a lot of Indian manufacturing are going to be put out of business because they just can't keep up with the modern might of the industrial Great Britain. All right? Now, here's another thing. British guys are going to use India to grow cotton. Now, I want you to remember this when you talk in APUSH, because there's a time period during the Civil War where Great Britain thinks about joining the American South and backing them up in the American Civil War. Why? Because Great Britain got tons of cotton from the American South. But you know what? The British don't join the American South. Instead, they stay out of the American Civil War completely because they're going to switch to getting all of their cotton from India. Okay? So, the British are going to force Indians to grow cotton instead of food. Now think about this, guys. The British are going to go in there, they're going to take over land, they're going to give people jobs, they're going to take over vast amounts of land, guys, that used to be used for growing food in India, and they're going to force people to grow cotton. Now, they're going to pay a lot of money to these farmers that grow cotton, but at the same time, think about it. If you are growing cotton and large amounts of it, what are you not growing? Food. So, the Indian economy between 1860 and 1900 is so focused on British cotton that there's going to be famines in India that kill over 15 million people. Here you see a map of the famines, guys. The darker areas are where the famines were more severe and more intense, but all of the darker areas were under the control of the British Empire in India. So, you might say, wow, Great Britain is bringing in all this modern stuff. Yeah, they're also causing famines that kill 15 million people. Once again, is imperialism beneficial or harmful? Well, what else? Well, the British are going to argue that, hey, we created all these new jobs. Remember, when we talked about the Second Industrial Revolution, all of these new white-collar jobs were created. Women become typists, women become secretaries, women become telephone operators. Well, the British are going to bring in new jobs, but here's the deal. Indians basically are only going to be allowed to mostly serve in domestic, low-paying jobs. Now, I'm going to go to a level that my master's degree went to that is not in your book, and you guys are now going to be on that level too. Here's the deal. Look at this picture. This was a very common poor Indian person's job to carry a rickshaw. Basically, you're going to run British people up and down the streets. All right? What else? Well, a lot of times you would see Indian males serving British males and females, all right? Serving the British government officials and their families. Here you see a British man getting a pedicure by an Indian man while another Indian male fans the British man sitting in the seat, okay? Here's another picture, guys, of an Indian man serving a woman tea, all right? So what am I trying to show you? Well, one of the ways that the British controlled Indian people, many historians argue, guys, is by basically creating an economy where the only jobs available were these domestic economies. And I want you to think about this. One historian I read, guys, made the argument that in a psychological way, the British were controlling the Indian males, right? They were exerting their dominance over them by only allowing them jobs as servants, which are typically jobs that females in Great Britain do. So if you think about it, in a way, the British were taking away the masculinity of the Indian males by forcing them into service-oriented positions, and they were all low-paying, all right? So anyway, guys, I thought that was an interesting thought that I read long ago, guys, when I studied this time period, but it's something that you could kind of bring up in an essay or whatever, all right? So anyway, you can definitely see some downsides, all right? Now, not to mention, guys, this. Yes, the British brought Western education, but you know what? The only people that could afford a British Western education were the wealthy upper classes of Indian society. So, yes, wealthy Indian people are going to benefit from Western education, but the majority of Indian people are not going to benefit. All right? Wealthier Indian people, yes, are going to benefit from the transportation like the railroads and the telegraph and all of these things. But if you are a poor, lower class, lower caste Indian person, you're not really going to benefit from all this. As a matter of fact, you might die from a famine. So, if you think about this, was British rule beneficial or harmful? You might think, well, it might have been beneficial to the upper class, but if you were an Indian business, it was harmful. If you were a poor Indian person, it was harmful. If you were an Indian farmer, it was harmful. I would imagine that the majority of Indian people at first did not really see clear benefits of British rule. So, benefits of British rule, question mark? Well, here's what they did do. They brought peace and stability. You see, before the British East India Company, before the British, there was a lot of warring princes. I told you how divided they were. And not only that, they were divided religiously, and there was a lot of fighting, and there was a lot of battles between different warring Indian groups. And guess what else? The Thuggee, which roamed the roads of India, also preyed on Indian people and attacked them, and the British got rid of them. So in a way, you might make the argument that the British brought peace and stability, unless you count the people dying from famine. They did eliminate a lot of abuses of the caste system, all right? So they are going to try their best to do a lot of elimination of the caste system, how everybody's unequal. They're going to do their best to teach the ideas of natural rights, but you're going to realize, guys, the British don't really believe in natural rights for Indian people, all right? They believe that that Indian people are inferior to British because one of this whole thing's about social Darwinism, right? Well, what else? Railroads and telegraphs are going to increase transportation and communication. But at the same time, guys, is the average Indian peasant going to be able to use a telegraph or have a use for a telegraph? Is the average Indian peasant going to be able to use a railroad? Well, maybe not at first. But guys, you give it 60, 70, 80 years, you might make the argument that the majority of Indian people were then benefiting from British rule. But by then, the British are going to rebel against the Indian people and they're going to break away and have their independence. Once again, guys, I just want to stress, upper-class Indians, they get to go to the British schools. They become highly educated, while the lower class, which are the majority of India, do not benefit from the education. Okay? So, I want you to think about, in the end, is British rule beneficial or harmful to India? We're going to have to decide, all right? But I will tell you this, we're going to look at some primary sources here on an assignment soon, and you guys can kind of see for yourself. All right? Pause if you need to. Now, let's move into that second part of the notes where I said, let's talk about how the British start trading into China. Now, think about how they started trading in India. All right? The East India Company came in, started pushing their way around, engaging in war against the Indian princes and taking over land. Then they started to force people to, into Christianity, and they started to do all these things, right? And they kind of took over. By the way, I want to bring that in too. At this time, British missionaries are going into India and spreading Christianity. Sometimes they are doing it peacefully, but sometimes the Hindus do not want to do it. Oh, and once again, I would say the British are going to argue that they banned the practice of sati, where the women would burn themselves on the funeral pyres. All right? More on that in an attachment later that I'm going to put on Google Classroom. Okay? All right, let's get into this. So I want to really quickly remind us about a few key trade definitions. All right? So I think we know by now what imports are, right? But just in case we don't, imports, guys, are goods that one nation buys from other nations. So if I am, let's say right now, guys, if I am the United States, we import a lot of goods from other countries. For instance, we import automobiles from Japan, all right? Japan, like people like Toyota and Mitsubishi, they sell automobiles in the United States. So those are imports that we buy, right? Now, when one nation sells stuff to another nation, those are called exports. So if you think about it, when you import, you are bringing stuff in. Import in, right? When you are exporting, you are Xing them out, all right? You are pushing them out of your country and selling them somewhere else, okay? So, now, in order to make money off trade, think about how logical this sounds, all right? In order to make money, what you want to do is you want to export more stuff than you import, okay? Basically, look at it this way. You want to sell more stuff than you're buying, right? You want to make more money than you spend, okay? So, to make money off trade, nations need to sell, export more goods than they buy, import, all right? If you think about it this way, every one of us, if we have a job, we have a budget, right? We do not want to spend more money than we make because then we go into debt. Countries are the same way. They want to sell more goods to other countries than they buy from other countries, okay? So, why am I telling you all this? Because if you understand this very key concept, guys, then you can understand why Great Britain is finna do what they finna do. Pause if you need to. All right, so I like talking about this, guys. It's pretty crazy, but why did Great Britain do what they're going to do, all right, which is conquer China? Well, it starts with this. China dominates trade. I mean, think about it. Think about the different periods of imperialism, right? Europeans have always been fascinated with trying to get to Asia, to get spices, to get silks, to get all kinds of goods out of Asia. So before 1800, China exported goods all over the world, which means, guys, China was making money, right? Now, China only let Europeans trade in one port, the city of Canton. On this map, guys, it's called Guangzhou. It's the same place, all right? So I want you to think about this. Europeans are only allowed to be in one city. Now, why do you think the Chinese didn't want Europeans able to go everywhere? If you're thinking, well, they didn't want the Europeans to go conquer and spread Christianity and take over, well, then you're right. So they only let, guys, Europeans trade in this one tiny little city. So guess what? Europeans ain't making much money, but they are buying stuff from China like crazy. So China is dominating the trade with Great Britain. And if you're a powerful nation like Great Britain, then you want to dominate trade, right? So at this time, Great Britain is buying more stuff from China than they are actually selling to China. One reason is they're only allowed in one port, okay? But another reason is the Chinese aren't buying any British goods. They don't want to buy British goods. So, you know what Great Britain does, guys? They do what anybody does when they're down and out and desperate. They start selling drugs. All right, guys, so I think I've told you this before, but in the 1800s, a very, very popular drug as a painkiller was called opium. Now, what is opium? Well, a form of opium is heroin. A form of opium is cocaine. They all come from poppies, all right? So if you take poppies, you can make opium, cocaine, and heroin. Now, don't go rushing out to the poppy fields this spring to go, want to make drugs. But anyway, guys, it's very true. So opium was a very common painkiller. I'll try to remember, guys, tomorrow or on the next thing of notes to show you advertisements for like cocaine toothache drops. All right, so you got a toothache, just take some cocaine. All right, you have a headache, just drink some opium. All right, it does the same stuff. It gets you really high. So opium is really addictive. All right, so Great Britain and other nations start selling opium into China. Now, the Chinese emperors had declared opium an illegal substance because so many Chinese people got addicted to it. All right? So Great Britain says, well, hey, if they're not going to buy our goods, let's start selling opium. And boy, did it work. So what would happen was, guys, the British would meet with Chinese traders in the ocean on their boats. They would give the opium to Chinese traders to act as middlemen, and then these traders would go into China and actually sell the opium. All right, so here you see an opium den, which would have been very common not only in China, but also in different cities in the Americas, all right, in the United States. So this is an opium den. If you watch a lot of Old West movies, you might see people smoking out of hookahs or bongs. They're smoking opium and they're getting stupidly high, as you can see from this picture. The guy in the back with his hands up in the air, probably high out of his mind, all right? The guy taking a hit in the middle, he's getting there. All right. The guy on the far right looked like he just had an Jaden Smith oh crap moment, and he looks like he's contemplating the meaning of life. But these guys are doing opium. All right. So here's what happens. Great Britain starts selling opium, and do you think the Chinese emperors like that? No, they do not. So the Chinese emperors are going to fight back and send Chinese warships to fight the British. Now, do you think, guys, wooden Chinese sailing ships have any kind of chance of defeating modern gas-powered, metal-powered, not metal-powered, but metal-hulled British ships? Absolutely not, guys. So this is what's called the Opium Wars. Now, the Opium Wars take place over the course of 1839 to 1860, about 40 years, all right? And there's technically like 2 Opium Wars, but we'll just call it one big period, all right? So what happens is the Chinese fight back and the British annihilate them. So here you guys see Chinese junks, which was what they're called, their ships, all right? And they're getting obliterated, guys, by the British modern Navy. So, no chance. So here's the deal, guys. Look what just happened. China said, no, we will not allow you to trade opium in our country. Great Britain said, okay, I'm doing it anyway. There was a fight and Great Britain won. So Chinese ships fight the British, but they lose because the British have better technology. Now, if you just won a war, what do you get to do as the winning nation? You get to tell the losing nation what to do. So how does Great Britain open trade in China? This is how. Pause if you need to. All right, so the Treaty of Nanking happened in 1842. So this was the end of the First Opium Wars, all right? So basically, the treaty says 5 ports now have to be open to European trade, all right? So how many ports were they allowed in the first time? 1 port, Canton or Guangzhou. Now, guys, because the British beat them up very badly in the First Opium War, now China has to open 5 ports. So what does that mean, guys? That means in China, here comes the white people. Now, another thing is, Great Britain gets the island of Hong Kong. Now, where on this map is Hong Kong, guys? It's a tiny little island down here. And guys, the British are going to control Hong Kong until the 1990s. Where, if you turn on the news, guys, there's still problems in Hong Kong because Hong Kong doesn't want to be a part of China. Great Britain gave it back to China in the 90s, but by then, Hong Kong had been away from China for so long, they wanted to be an independent nation, and they're still fighting over that even today. So, Great Britain gets the island of Hong Kong, and they're going to hold on to that until the 1990s. All right, now, soon, as you can imagine, 5 ports are open to European trade. Here come the French. Here come the Russians. Here come the Japanese. Here come the Germans. Here come everybody. Here come the white people. Well, Japanese are Asian. That's not exactly Caucasian. But anyway. All right, so here come the missionaries, guys. And the missionaries are going to go in, and they're going to go, oh, what are all these pagan temples? And in some cases, guys, they'll be nice about spreading Christianity. But literally in some cases, guys, missionaries will go through like Buddhist temples and tear them to the ground. Why? Because they say you're not worshiping the right God. So, guys, you can imagine how the Chinese people are going to react to that. Now, at the end of the Second Opium Wars, in 1858, there was another treaty called the Treaty of Tianjin. And in the Treaty of Tianjin, guess what happens? Even more ports are open to Europeans. So guys, if the Europeans weren't flooding into China before, now they are really flooding into China. So, plus China has to give Great Britain this entire area called the Kowloon Peninsula. Where is that, guys? It's so small you can't even see on the map, but it's just north of Hong Kong. All right, right here. So if you zoom in, all right, Hong Kong is right there, the Kowloon Peninsula is right there, and then mainland China, the big part of China, is just above. So, Great Britain is slowly acquiring territory. Okay? All right, now what does this all mean? Well, guys, by 1900, Europeans have what are known as spheres of influence. So here's a map of China in 1900. Every different color, guys, is a different nation that controls a different part of China. Now, what a sphere of influence means is this. They are areas where countries have exclusive trading rights. So in the orange, only British can trade there. In the yellow, only the French can trade there. In the purple, guys, only the Japanese. In the green, only the Germans. And look, in the north, only Russians. So, guys, China is getting divided up among all the European powers, guys. And now they're going to start exploiting China like they exploited India. Now, this is not the end of our story on China, but this is going to be the end of the notes today. All right? Quick announcement before we stop. What I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to put these notes and everything in a big folder you're going to see, guys, with some assignments, guys, and some videos to watch. Here's what I want you to do, guys. I'm not trying to overwhelm you. I just want you to do the assignments and stuff when you can. Now, I would recommend, guys, don't let it build up so after 3 weeks, it's all like crammed together, okay? And you're rushing to get it all done, guys. But I will say, I'm not going to count it off if you don't do some of the assignments, tomorrow, all right, until tomorrow or the next day, guys. But I'm going to put the assignments on there. I'm going to put videos on there for you to watch. Some videos, guys, will have assignments. Some video guys will not have assignments. You just watch the video. But I want you guys to do everything I put on Google Classroom, and I will grade it as I get it in, okay? You guys have a great evening, all right? And I hope to see you sometime soon.